This is an Urban Monk video that has been a long time in the making. I have finally reached 100,000 miles on my first generation V-Strom 1000. And like I've done before, I am going to go into the engine, do some measurements, but I'm also going to just give you a review on my experience over that 100,000 miles with this bike, because you may be thinking about buying a used V-Strom with, I don't know, 20,000, 30,000, maybe even 50,000 miles on it, and thinking, ooh, should I be scared? Well, let's get into it. I'm at 100,000 miles. Welcome to Urban Monk TV. Okay, so like I've done before at 50,000, and then I did one at 65,000, pretty much every 15,000 miles when I'm doing a valve tappet check, valve tappet clearance check. And by the way, if you want to see a video on how to do that, I've created a video on how to do a valve tappet clearance check on this bike. We're going to be doing that here, but this video isn't going to show that. Go to the other video if you want the how-to. And but we'll do that as a way of looking at, how is this engine holding up internally. We also do a compression check. I'm going to do that here. And but there's a lot of other comments I have to make. So let's get into it. In short, this thing is my baby. I know this bike like the back of my hand, and when I ride it, it literally becomes an extension of my body at this point. It and I are one, and we've got a lot of miles between the two of us to build a relationship. I know her inside and out. I don't know how much she knows me. The short answer is, in 100,000 miles, what parts have I replaced? I'll start from the front of the bike. Tires, of course that's front and back. Brake pads. I have replaced clutch fluid and brake fluid every couple of years or so. I keep a very detailed journal of those things. I have replaced a clutch lever because I dropped the bike at a gas pump and broke the lever, so not a part failure, just user error. What else? Oh, rear brake pads. Of course, brake fluid in the rear's master cylinder. Just flushing that out every couple of years. Chains. I've got videos on how to replace the chain and sprockets on this bike. I have replaced the rear brake disc, because it did measure pretty close to worn. I must be heavy on the rears. The fronts I have not replaced in 100,000. And what else? I mean, it's all common wear items. I replaced a windshield. I have the stock one, but for me it's a little too short. I'm 6'1" tall, and I like a little bit taller windscreen to get the air to clear just the top of my helmet and not buff it as much. But that's just me. And I'm still on the original clutch, so a lot of talk out there about chutter or idle hammer on this particular engine with these bikes. I will say, in 100,000 miles, I am experiencing a little bit of that idle hammer. Let me talk about that. So idle hammer is when the clutch lever is out and all of the clutch plates are together. So this is the state of the clutch when you're propelling and going down the road. Over time, there's just a little bit of a vibration or a knocking that I can feel. I can feel it in my feet, a little bit in the handlebars. It's rougher than when it was new, for lack of a better way to put it. And what I can do is just pull just slightly the clutch lever in, putting a little pressure on the expansion of the discs, and when I do that, that vibration goes away, or the knocking goes away. It becomes extremely smooth. It essentially feels like it did when the bike was new to me, and over time a little bit, but it doesn't affect my riding whatsoever. So on the internet, there's a lot about replacing the clutch basket on this. There used to be a guy who would do a modification to them. They call it the works basket. I believe that guy is no longer doing that work, and I'm hearing all kinds of new approaches with a Suzuki V1050 engine, or I think it's only the DLs now that use these engines. I don't think there's an SV using a 1000 anymore. But now it's a 1050cc, and you're able, I think, don't take my word on this, I'll do a video about it maybe later on, that you can replace the 1000 clutch basket with the 1050 clutch basket. No research has been done on that by me yet, so I'm just saying, do your own research, but I think that might be a solution out there for those of you that want that to go away. But let me just attest that you can continue with that idle knock for many, many thousands of miles. I've gone tens of thousands experiencing that, because I think it really started kicking in, just after 85,000. So anyways, clutch is original clutch. All the light bulbs are the original. I have the original grips. Man, I guess let's just go look for something that's either broken or worn on this thing. There's not much. After 100,000 miles, that's the gear shift toe pad. Worn, sure, but a lot of ups and downs. I experienced a little melting of the top of the fairing here above the speedometer. This is not a failure on the design by Suzuki. What it was my old windscreen. I had the bike parked outside at work, and a hot summer day, the sun must have reached an angle through the windscreen that literally was like a magnifying glass with the ants on the sidewalk when you're a kid, and it just concentrated the sun's energy and kind of warped the top of that. Obviously not affecting performance of the bike in any way, and I've lived with that for a good 70,000 miles. I think it's worth noting that I've never had to replace the oil seals on the front forks, and they're still performing wonderfully. I am going to do a video in the future because I should be changing the fluid in those front forks, and I've never done that video. So to come, future video. But at 100,000 miles, my original seals are still holding up just fine. Wheel bearings are all still original and solid. Every time I change tires, I inspect these bearings when I have the wheels off, and it's still just as true and solid as can be. Haven't replaced them yet. Of course, I've done oil changes, and pretty religiously. And I also change the coolant every couple of years. And I just use regular, the green stuff, the cheap stuff, but safe for aluminum engines. The seat on my V-Strom is just now, and this was literally at like 98,000, 98,500 miles, that this began to show up, and it is spreading pretty quickly, but there's just a little crack now in a seam on the seat. So I will have a future video on how to replace the seat cover, or potentially the entire seat, depending upon what is available for this bike. At this moment in time, I don't know and haven't researched that, but I'll be doing that. And so, yeah, okay, a little seat issue. This thing has sat out in the sun Like I mentioned with the fairing, plenty of miles. Now I do store it in the garage most of the time. I guess most of its life in terms of hours or days has been indoors, but certainly this bike has been out on the road for however much time it takes to put 100,000 miles on it. I have replaced a battery, actually twice now, and pretty recently that second one. So I acquired this bike in 2015 with 2,300 miles on it. It had a battery in it at the time, and I went quite some time with that battery and replaced it in maintenance journal. I replaced that first battery in June of 2020 at almost 64,000 miles. And then now I just replaced it right here at 100,000 miles, and I just did a video on how to do that with another one here in August of 2025. So 5 years essentially on that battery, 5 years and a month. No, 5 years and 2 months. And that's batteries. Tires, you know I'm pretty exclusive on the Shinko 705s. I am actually going to try a new tire coming up, but that's another video. How many oil changes have I done in this time? $42 oil changes in 100,000 miles. So as you can see, I'm pretty frequent with them. The recommendation is far longer between oil changes from the service manual, but I believe in cheap oil changed more frequently. Hey, it's working for me. I'm getting a lot of life out of this bike. Air filters I've replaced, again, a wear item or consumable item. At one point I was gifted a K&N filter for this, so now that's what's in the bike, and I no longer buy the new paper filter each time. I just clean out the K&N, re-oil it, and put it back in. I have a video on how to replace the air filter in the V-Strom. You can see that here. Another one is the top box lock cylinder just broke yesterday. So post 100,000 miles. So it took that long for that part to fail. I'm in the hunt for a new one. Probably be doing a video on how to replace that, because clearly it's a part that fails. Not a Suzuki part, I will point out. It is made by, I believe, Givi, if that's how you pronounce it, Givi. But Suzuki did not make these side cases and top box for the 2012 Adventure model, and this is specific to just that year and that Adventure model, which I happen to own. With that caveat, this is not a Suzuki part failure. It is a contractor of Suzuki's, and their part failed, but Suzuki sold it. Now, Suzuki has a part number for this lock set, and I'm having a hard time tracing it down in the United States. It's kind of out of stock everywhere. So this is what broke, is this little, I'll call it an actuator. When you turn the key, it goes like this and presses against a lever that opens the latch, and the aluminum just broke on the end of it. You know, it was getting to be a little fiddly, and so I would kind of wrestle with it a little bit, and maybe I just put too much force into the thing, but broke. Hard to find. But not a Suzuki part failure, but it's on my Suzuki, and I interact with that lock all the time because I put everything in the top box. Let's get into the engine and see how things are holding up. So the first thing is to get into the tops of the heads, which I've done. Then I check the clearance between the cam lobes and the valve tappets. Okay, so I've taken the bike apart some and have broken it down to the tops of the heads. Got the radiator off, all the side fairings. Essentially just gotten into the top of the engine, you know, without removing the cylinder heads. But the cylinder head covers are off. So I'm looking at the valves and the valve tappets and the cams. If you're interested in how to do this process, I didn't show it here in this video because I've done this before. Here's a video on how to do that. So in short, my engine, in terms of the wear to the valves, to valve tappets, to the valve cams, there's like no wear indicated since the last time I took a look at this at 85,000 miles. So couple of things. One, the engine is still holding up very well from that kind of internal wear. The thinking is if the cams and the tappets are not wearing, then other lubricated internal engine parts are also holding up as well. Of course, I'm not looking at like the bearings in the transmission. I'm not breaking the crankcase apart, but it's a reasonable assumption that what's happening at the top of the engine is likely also happening at the bottom of the engine. And what's happening at the top of the engine is little or no wear at all. Now, you might ask, what kind of oil am I using? I have done a video on that too. I have exclusively used one kind of oil the entire time I've owned this motorcycle. I bought it with 2,300 miles on it, so call it almost brand new. And so I don't know what that oil was that was in the crankcase when I bought it, but I changed it immediately just to start at my own baseline, and I've used the same oil ever since. So here's that video on using one oil exclusively and what that oil is. I'll give you a hint. It's really inexpensive. Now let's look at engine compression, which is the other thing that I like to do in these review videos. For the rear cylinder, which is easiest to get at, and the front cylinder, which isn't too bad, but the radiator's got to come off. So compression is as good as it's ever been. I don't know what more to say about that. This engine just keeps delivering. So 100,000 miles, I'm viewing this bike as, let's put it back together and get on the road. I would ride this thing anywhere right now with 100,000 miles on it that I would have rode it when it had 2,300 miles on it, excuse me. I love the bike. I've been on record saying that here on this channel. You may be looking at a used first gen V-Strom with 25,000 miles on it, or 30,000, 40,000, even 50,000 miles on it. These things are selling for $2,000 to $4,000 right now, in that range, and I would say $4,000 is on the upper end. And you may be thinking, oh boy, what am I getting into with a high mileage motorcycle like that? Of course, every machine is treated differently by its owners. I do keep a maintenance journal and keep very close track of the things that I do to maintain my bike, which keeps me on schedule. But that being said, I push spark plugs from 7,500 recommended interval to 15,000 without issue. I don't know what to tell you. Like, if a V-Strom that is being sold runs and rides well, and you can see that it hasn't been like abused in some other way, odds are pretty good that you got a lot of miles to go if it has 25, 30, 40, 50,000, even 60,000 miles. When I took my cross-country trip where I did almost 9,000 miles, my bike had 71,000 miles on it at that point. When I started out through the desert in temperatures that could kill me, and just didn't think twice about the reliability of my machine. And of course, it got me all the way here to the Atlantic Ocean in Maine and back again without issue. And then has kept going since then without issue. I'm really kind of going on and on here, but the V-Strom for me has been the greatest value I spent $5,500 on this motorcycle with 2,300 miles on it. You know, think about what an equivalent new motorcycle costs from those other brands. And then now 97,700 miles later, oh, the joy I've had in those miles. I'm still experiencing the joy. So, best value out there. Hey, if you like motorcycling, check out my book, Creating Mr. Corton, the memoir of the build of my cafe racer. And you can find all those videos for that build here on the channel if you're interested in custom motorcycle building. And of course, I've got everything you can think of under the sun with the V-Strom, first gen, but same engine in second gen and third gen. Yeah, they increase the displacement, but it's still the same engine. This engine has been around for a long time. Started in the TL1000, which was an answer to, was like Suzuki's answer to Ducati sport bikes at the time, which is another reason I love the V-Strom. It's got kind of that V-twin Ducati rumble to it. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you want to become an urban monk. Thanks for watching.